The Suliban scum who attacked that human passenger ship were about to learn why you never fuck with humanity. You think your fancy tech makes you strong, makes you better than us primitive humans? Well, guess what, you alien pieces of shit. We will show you what real strength is. I stared into my whiskey glass, the amber liquid swirling with memories of the day those tentacled Suliban bastards went too far. I had seen a lot of action in my years, fought in more scraps and tight spots than most, but that civilian transport massacre was something else. Thousands of innocent men, women and children, snuffed out because some alien assholes wanted to throw their weight around and prove they could do whatever they wanted to us lowly humans. Well, not today, fuckers. Today you learn what it means to be human. Today you get a little lesson in what happens when you piss off the wrong species. We may not have your shiny ships or ultra-tech laser guns, but we got guts and brains and balls, and that counts for a whole hell of a lot more than you think. You believe this will be a short little war, an easy curb stomp to put us back in our place? I chuckled darkly to myself, swishing my drink. War with humans. Better strap in, boys, 'cause this will be the hardest and last fight of your miserable lives. You have no idea what's coming for you, but you will soon enough. The whole bar seemed to fade away as the memories played out in my mind like a morbid hollow film. That fateful day when humanity decided enough was enough. When we finally stood up, looked our alien overlords in their beady eyes, and said, "No more." When we took a stand as one people and declared in one voice, "For the fallen we fight." It didn't matter that we were outgunned and outnumbered. Didn't matter that no one, not even most humans, gave us a snowball's chance in hell of winning. What mattered is that we were pissed off and hungry for payback. What mattered is that when the Suliban attacked our people, they fucked up hard, and we were going to make damn sure they realized that. The hard way. I downed the rest of my drink in one long pull and glared into the empty glass. This was going to be a hell of a fight and a hell of a story. Hopefully, by the end of it all, the Suliban and every other alien asshole out there would finally understand one simple thing. You do not ever fuck with humanity, unless you want to get fucked back 10 times harder. I waved the bartender over for a refill and settled in. Time to give the kid the gory details of how we took on an empire and taught them the real meaning of fuck around and find out. So there I was, downing another whiskey and remembering how those Suliban scumbags thought they could just roll over us. Typical alien arrogance. They launched this massive invasion of our space, probably thinking it would be a cakewalk. Wipe out the puny humans, be home in time for dinner. But they forgot one thing: never underestimate humanity. Sure, they had numbers and tech on their side. We were outgunned and outnumbered. But what we lacked in firepower we made up for in sheer grit and determination. Our boys and girls didn't just roll over. Oh no, we fought back and fought hard. Hit-and-run attacks striking from the shadows before vanishing into the black, death by 1,000 cuts. And that wasn't all. Our hackers, the best damn coders in the galaxy, wormed their way into Suliban systems, shut down their sensors, scrambled their comms, even turned their own weapons against them. It was pure chaos for those tentacled turds, never knowing when their ships would just start shooting each other. But the real turning point, the moment that broke the Suliban's back, that was Zeta Prime. They launched a surprise attack on our colony there, probably thinking it would be easy pickings, bombard it from orbit, kill thousands of civilians, demoralize us into surrender. Typical alien scum tactics. I was a fighter jock back then, had the privilege of flying in that furball. Let me tell you, it was the most intense damn thing I've ever been through, zipping through the atmosphere, engines screaming, dodging energy bolts and debris, going toe-to-toe with Suliban fighters, using our size and agility to stay in their blind spots. It was knife fight in a phone booth, pure skill against skill. We lost a lot of good men and women that day. Watched more than a few friends by the farm. Brave heroes, every one of them, giving their lives to protect our people. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten. In the end, we beat those Suliban bastards back, taught them that humanity will not be stepped on or cowed. The looks on their ugly faces when they realized they'd fallen into our trap, the sheer oh shit moment when their mighty warships started blowing each other apart, it was priceless. Zeta Prime was a wake-up call for the Suliban. and for every other alien race out there who thought they could fuck with us. We showed them that day that humanity will not go quietly into the night, that we will fight tooth and nail to defend our homes, our people, that we may be outgunned but never underestimate our courage and our cleverness. That battle was a turning point, but it was only the beginning. The Suliban didn't just pack up and go home after one black eye. Oh no, they were out for blood now. Couldn't let themselves be humiliated by us lowly humans. They doubled down on the invasion, throwing even more ships and troops our way. Wanted to drown us in bodies and bombs. But even after handing those tentacled bastards their asses at Zeta Prime, we knew this fight was far from over. The Suliban had an empire spanning half the damn galaxy and tech that still made our best shit look like sticks and stones. If we wanted to have any chance of winning this war, we needed to level the playing field. That's when the brass came to me and my team with a mission, a real do-or-die kind of job. Intel had gotten wind of some new Suliban superweapon they were cooking up in one of their top-secret labs, something about artificial black holes, real end-of-the-universe type stuff. We had to get our hands on those plans or humanity was toast. Sneaking into the facility was the easy part. We managed to hijack one of their supply ships and bluffed our way past security disguised as the crew. But once we were inside, that's when the real fun started. The place was crawling with Suliban soldiers, all armed to the teeth. We split up, my team planting explosives around the facility to create one hell of a distraction, while I made a beeline for the main research lab. That's where I ran into him. Antares' dear old dad, one of the top eggheads in the Suliban Empire. The bastard was waiting for me, probably thought he could take me down himself. We squared off, fists flying, knocking over tables full of beakers and high-tech gizmos. He was good, I'll give him that, but he was no match for a pissed-off human with nothing to lose. A quick jab to the throat and a roundhouse to the head, and Papa Antares was taking a little nap on the floor. I jammed a data drive into the nearest console and started the download, praying to whatever gods were listening that my team had gotten the explosives set. The whole damn place started shaking as the bombs went off, alarms blaring so loud I thought my eardrums would burst. I grabbed the drive and bolted, sprinting through crumbling hallways as the lab collapsed around me. I barely made it to the hangar bay, leaping into the nearest Suliban fighter just as the roof caved in, blasted my way out of there like a bat out of hell, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. Those stolen plans turned the tide of the war. Our eggheads reverse-engineered the Suliban's black hole tech, even came up with ways to counter it. For the first time, we had a chance. We could hit the bastards where it hurt, take out their big, shiny toys, and show them that humanity wasn't going down without one hell of a fight. The tide had turned, and humanity was ready to take the fight right to the Suliban's front door. I took another swig of whiskey as I recalled the mission that struck at the very heart of our enemy. The one that proved nowhere in the galaxy was safe from human vengeance and human bullets. High Command had cooked up a plan so audacious, so balls-to-the-wall insane, that at first I thought they'd lost their damn minds. An infiltration mission, deep into Suliban territory. Not just any old target, mind you. We were going after their gods-forsaken homeworld, the belly of the beast itself. The objective was simple but far from easy. Sabotage their orbital defense grid, blow it to kingdom come. Create an opening for our fleet to come in and rain hell on those tentacled bastards. It was a suicide mission, plain and simple. But if it worked, it would deal a crippling blow to Suliban morale and their ability to wage war. I handpicked the meanest, toughest sons of bitches I knew for the job. Men and women who'd stared death in the face and spat in its eye. We spent weeks training, drilling, preparing for every possible scenario. Failure was not an option. Getting onto the planet was the easy part. Our tech boys had whipped up some damn convincing disguises, made us look like your average Suliban civilians. We slipped in with the daily traffic, just another bunch of workers and drones going about our business. But once we were planetside, that's when the real pucker factor set in. The place was crawling with security. Patrols on every street corner, surveillance drones buzzing overhead like angry hornets. One wrong move, one slip-up, and we'd be dead before we hit the ground. We had to play it cool, blend in, act like we belonged. Easier said than done when you're a human in a sea of aliens. I'll never forget the moment when some Suliban kid bumped into me in the street, knocked my disguise askew. My heart damn near stopped. I thought for sure we were made, that the jig was up. But I kept my cool, played it off like nothing happened, just some clumsy oaf who needed to watch where he was going. Thankfully the kid bought it, and we managed to keep moving. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of dodging patrols and drones, we reached the defense grid control center. This was it, the moment of truth. We stacked up on the door, ready to breach. That's when all hell broke loose. Turns out, the Suliban had some kind of elite warrior caste, genetically engineered killing machines armed to the teeth with advanced weaponry, and a whole squad of them was waiting for us inside. The firefight was intense, brutal, plasma bolts flying everywhere, searing flesh and scorching metal. I took one in the shoulder, felt like someone had jammed a white-hot poker into my arm, but I pushed through the pain, kept fighting. Had to. The fate of the mission of the whole damn war rested on us. We lost good people in that room, brave men and women cut down in their prime, but in the end, through sheer grit and determination, we prevailed. The Suliban lay dead at our feet, and the control center was ours. I dragged myself over to the main console, blood oozing from my wound, vision blurring at the edges. With trembling hands, I planted the explosives, primed the detonator. This was it, the culmination of all our planning, all our sacrifice. I hit the button and the world went white. The explosions ripped through the facility, tearing apart delicate machinery and vital systems. Klaxons blared, emergency lights flashed. We'd done it. The orbital defenses were down. As if on cue, the human fleet arrived, dropping out of hyperspace like avenging angels. They opened fire, raining destruction down on the Suliban capital. Buildings crumbled, fires raged. It was a sight to behold. We barely made it out alive, extracted by a stealth ship as the city burned around us. I collapsed in the airlock, my vision fading, my blood pooling on the deck. But as I slipped into unconsciousness, I had a smile on my face. We'd struck a blow that the Suliban would never forget, shown them that nowhere was safe, that humanity would fight them to the bitter end. The attack on the Suliban homeworld was a crushing blow, but those tentacled bastards weren't ready to roll over just yet. As humanity pressed our advantage across a dozen fronts, the Suliban played their most insidious card yet. A biological weapon engineered to target human DNA with ruthless precision. I was laid up in a hospital bed, still nursing the plasma burn in my shoulder from the homeworld mission, when the news broke. New Palace, one of our most populous colony worlds, had gone dark. No comms, no traffic in or out, just an eerie, deathly silence. When our scouts finally broke through the blockade to assess the situation, the scenes that greeted them were straight out of a nightmare. The once bustling cities had been reduced to ghost towns overnight, their streets littered with bodies. Men, women, children, all struck down by an invisible killer that left no mark. I was still confined to bed rest when the brass came knocking, but I'll be damned if a little thing like doctor's orders was going to keep me out of this fight. I had the medical droid unhook my IV and struggled into my uniform, ignoring the searing pain in my barely healed wound. The mission was simple, but far from easy. Assemble a team of our best and brightest, soldiers, medics, xenobiologists, and beat the Suliban to the punch. Find a cure for their little bioweapon before it could spread to any more of our worlds, and put the fear of God and humanity into those scaly sons of bitches while we were at it. I handpicked the finest men and women I knew for the job, people who could think on their feet and shoot straight under pressure. We hit the ground running on New Palace, setting up a field lab in the ruins of what had once been a thriving metropolis. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of what was at stake. We worked around the clock, sifting through mountains of data and running endless tests. The virus was like nothing we'd ever seen before, a devious little bastard that mutated faster than we could map its genome. Days bled into weeks as we raced against the clock. Every wasted minute was another life lost, another world at risk. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before, surviving on stims and sheer stubborn will. Sleep was a luxury we couldn't afford. There were times when it seemed hopeless, when even I started to wonder if this was a fight we could win, but then I'd think of all the lives counting on us, all the brave souls who'd given their last full measure in this war, and I'd remember why we couldn't, why we wouldn't, give up. Finally, after a month of hell, we had our breakthrough. One of our techs, a scrawny kid fresh out of the academy, found the chink in the virus's armor, a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation that disrupted its ability to replicate. It was so simple, so elegant, that I could have laughed if I hadn't been so damn tired. We rigged up a prototype device and tested it on a live sample, held our breath as we watched the virus wither and die under the invisible onslaught, and then we got to work. The next 48 hours were a blur of caffeine and desperation as we churned out enough devices to blanket the colony. I led the distribution myself, overseeing the treatment of the infected with a grim determination that bordered on obsession. What I saw in those makeshift clinics will haunt me until the day I die. Families ravaged by the disease, children gasping out their last breaths while their parents wailed in helpless agony. But slowly, surely, the tide began to turn. The devices worked better than we could have hoped, the virus's hold weakening with every passing hour. People who'd been at death's door began to recover, color returning to their pallid cheeks as the sickness retreated. Within a month, New Palace was officially declared virus-free. The Suliban's great bioweapon had been reduced to just another footnote in the history of their failure. But the damage had been done. Millions dead, an entire world scarred by the horror of what had been unleashed upon it. The fury that burned in the hearts of every human who saw those images, who heard those stories, was a fire that would not be quenched by anything less than total victory. The Suliban had sought to break us, to bring us to our knees with their vicious sneak attack. But all they had done was remind us of what we were fighting for, of the depths of evil we were up against, and of the lengths we would go to in order to protect our own. As I stood amidst the celebrating crowds on New Palace, watching the doctors and nurses and soldiers weeping with relief and joy, I felt a grim resolve settle over me. This was far from over. The Suliban were on the ropes, but they were far from beaten, and we would not rest until every last one of those bastards had paid for their crimes in blood. I caught a transport back to the front lines that very night, my freshly healed wound throbbing in time with the beat of the engines. The fight continued, and I had a war to win. For the fallen, for the future, for humanity. I downed the last of my whiskey and signaled for another. The memories of that final mission still burned bright in my mind, even after all these years. The mission that brought the Suliban Empire to its knees and ended their reign of terror once and for all. With the virus outbreak contained, we knew we had to press our advantage. The Suliban were reeling, but they were far from beaten. We needed a knockout punch, something that would cripple their ability to wage war and bring them to the negotiating table. That's when I came up with the plan. It was bold, audacious, and more than a little insane, but if it worked, it would change the course of the war in one fell swoop. The target was the Suliban's central communications hub, a heavily fortified installation located deep within their territory. This wasn't just some relay station or backup server farm. It was the nerve center of their entire military machine, the place where every order, every troop movement, every scrap of intelligence passed through. If we could infiltrate the hub and upload a specially designed virus into their systems, we could bring their whole damn network crashing down around their ears. No more coordination, no more real-time battlespace intel, just pure, unadulterated chaos. But getting inside that fortress would be no cakewalk. The place had more layers of security than an onion, and was guarded by some of the meanest, nastiest Suliban sons of bitches around. These weren't your average grunts or conscripts, they were the elite of the elite, handpicked for their skill and their utter fanatical devotion to the Empire. I handpicked a team of our best and brightest for the job. Hackers, infiltration specialists, and stone-cold killers, every one of them. We drilled for weeks, going over every detail of the plan until we could do it in our sleep. When the time came, we launched our assault with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. I took the lead, piloting a state-of-the-art stealth ship that our eggheads had cooked up in some Black Ops lab somewhere. The thing flew like a dream and had a cloaking device that made us damn near invisible to sensors. We slipped past the hub's outer defenses like a whisper, hugging the contours of the asteroid it was built into. Once we were in range, we made our approach, matching our ship's EM signature to the regular traffic to avoid triggering any alarms. The first few minutes were tense as hell, every heartbeat thundering in our ears as we waited for the inevitable shout of alarm or burst of weapons fire. But it never came. We'd timed our arrival to coincide with a shift change, and the soldiers were more focused on getting to their bunks than watching for intruders. We made our way deeper into the facility, following the route we'd memorized from stolen blueprints and intercepted transmissions. Twice we had to take cover as patrols passed by, huddling in the shadows with our breaths held and our fingers on our triggers. But we managed to stay undetected, moving like ghosts through the corridors until we reached the central control room. This was the heart of the beast, a cavernous chamber filled with row upon row of consoles and server stacks. A dozen Suliban technicians looked up in shock as we stormed in, weapons drawn. They were no soldiers, just a bunch of pale, spindly creatures, more at home with lines of code than lines of fire. They went for their sidearms, but they were too slow. My team cut them down with brutal efficiency, hot plasma scorching the air and the stench of seared flesh filling our nostrils. But one of the bastards managed to trigger an alarm before we could put him down. A klaxon began to blare, and the whole damn room was bathed in pulsing red light. 2 minutes, our hacker shouted, her fingers flying over a console as she worked to upload the virus. 2 minutes. That was all the time we had before this place would be swarming with pissed-off Suliban, looking to turn us into Swiss cheese. I took up position by the door, my rifle at the ready. The rest of my team fanned out, covering the other entrances and keeping an eye on the technicians' bodies. You never could tell with the Suliban. They had a nasty habit of not staying dead. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness, each one feeling like an eternity. I could hear shouts and the pounding of feet in the distance, getting closer with every passing heartbeat. 1 minute, the hacker called out, her voice tight with tension. The first Suliban soldiers burst into the room, plasma rifles blazing. I dropped 2 of them with headshots before they could even register our presence, their lifeless bodies tumbling to the floor. But more kept coming, pouring through the doorways like a tide of angry hornets. We laid down a withering hail of fire, plasma bolts crisscrossing the room in a deadly web. I saw one of my men go down, a smoking hole punched through his chest. Another took a hit to the leg, sending him sprawling, but they kept fighting, teeth gritted against the pain, spitting defiance with every shot. And then, just when it seemed like we would be overwhelmed, the hacker let out a triumphant shout. We fell back, laying down covering fire as we went. I hauled the wounded man to his feet, slinging his arm over my shoulder as I half-dragged, half-carried him towards the extraction point. The corridors were filled with smoke and the flash of weapons fire, the Suliban hot on our heels. But we had the advantage now. We knew the layout of the facility, knew every twist and turn, and we had the virus. As we neared the docking bay, I could hear the sounds of battle raging outside. The human fleet, alerted by the virus's activation, had begun their attack, hammering the Suliban defenses with everything they had. We burst out onto the landing platform, plasma bolts sizzling past our ears. Our ship was waiting, engines hot, ramp lowered. We piled on board, the hatch sealing behind us with a hiss. As we rocketed away from the installation, I watched through a viewport as the virus took hold. The Suliban's communications array, a vast network of dishes and antennas, began to flicker and spark. And then, in a burst of blinding light, it exploded, raining debris down onto the asteroid's surface. The rest of the fleet pressed their advantage, striking deep into Suliban territory. Without their comms network, the bastards were blind and deaf, unable to coordinate a defense. Their ships fell out of formation, their ground troops scattered and confused. Cat was a rout, a slaughter. The Suliban Empire, once so proud and so fearsome, crumbled like a house of cards. Within days, their capital world had fallen, their leaders rounded up and forced to sign an unconditional surrender. The war was over. Humanity had won. And as I sat there in that bar, nursing my whiskey, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction wash over me. We'd paid a steep price for our victory, in blood and in sacrifice. But in the end, we'd shown the galaxy what humanity was made of, what we could achieve when we stood together, united in common purpose. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the fallen, to the brave men and women who had given their lives so that others might live free. And then I drank deep, the whiskey burning my throat, a reminder that I was still alive, still fighting. For that's what humans do. We fight, we endure, and no matter the odds, no matter the cost, we find a way to win. That's our strength, that's our power. And God help any poor bastard who tries to take that away from us. For that's what humans do. We fight, we endure, and no matter the odds, no matter the cost, we find a way to win. That's our strength. That's our power. With the Suliban Empire in ruins and their military shattered, we thought the worst was behind us. We were wrong, dead wrong. As our people worked to rebuild, to heal the scars of war, a new threat stirred in the shadows. A hardcore faction of Suliban, led by a ruthless son of a bitch named Zortak, just couldn't accept that they'd lost, that their precious empire was gone, crushed under the heel of human defiance. So they went to ground, scurrying off to the darkest corners of the galaxy to lick their wounds and plot their revenge. We should have known better than to think they'd just slink away quietly. Should have known that their hatred, their fanaticism, wouldn't let them rest until they'd made us bleed again. That's where I came in. The brass tapped me to lead the hunt for Zortak and his band of die-hard holdouts, gave me carte blanche to assemble a team of the meanest, toughest, smartest soldiers and spooks we had. The best of the best, because nothing less would do against an enemy like this. We chased those Suliban bastards from one end of the galaxy to the other, through the seedy underbellies of frontier space stations, across the blasted wastelands of dead worlds. Anywhere they could hide, we followed, always just a step behind. It was grueling work, tracking an enemy who knew they were being hunted. They were fast and they were cunning, always seemed to slip away just when we thought we had them cornered. But we were relentless, driven by a righteous fury, a burning need to see justice done, to make sure that every last one of those hardline fanatics paid for their crimes. And pay they did. We ran them to ground on a dozen worlds in 100 firefights and close-quarters brawls. Zortak's followers fought like demons with all the zeal of true believers. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Not against the skill and determination of my team. We whittled them down bit by bit, cut off their supply lines, took out their leaders one by one. It was a long, brutal campaign, fought in the shadows and the silence of deep space. But we never wavered, never lost sight of our goal. The end came on a nameless rock on the edge of civilized space. Zortak had holed up there, in a fortified bunker buried deep beneath the planet's surface, planning his final stand, his last bid for revenge against the humans who had destroyed his dreams of conquest. We hit that base like the fist of an angry god, blasted through their defenses, carved a path of destruction right to Zortak's doorstep. Every step was bought in blood, every inch of ground paid for with the lives of good men and women, but we pressed on, implacable, unstoppable. In the heart of the base I found Zortak waiting for me. The bastard had decked himself out in some kind of powered battle armor, all gleaming black metal and crackling energy fields. He came at me like a freight train, fists and energy blades lashing out in a blinding flurry. It was like trying to fight a force of nature, all rage and roaring fury. We clashed in the confined space of the command center, trading blows that would have shattered stone, split steel. The air sang with the sizzle of energy weapons, the crackle of overloading circuitry. For a moment, I thought the Suliban warlord might actually win, might crush me beneath his armored bulk and claim his revenge. But then I remembered what I was fighting for, what we had all fought for, through all the long years of this bloody war. I remembered the fallen, the sacrifices made, and I found a reserve of strength I didn't know I had. I pushed back against Zortak's onslaught, found the chinks in his armor, the gaps in his defenses, and I pressed my attack, hammering at him with everything I had. In the end, it was over in a heartbeat. A lucky blow, a momentary lapse in Zortak's guard. My blade found his throat and the warlord fell, his lifeblood pooling on the deck. As I stood over his corpse, breathing hard, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction wash over me. It was done. The Suliban threat was ended, once and for all. Zortak and his fanatical followers would trouble the galaxy no more. With the last embers of the Suliban Empire stamped out, a new era of peace settled across the stars. Humanity had emerged from the crucible of war stronger than ever, tempered by the fires of adversity into something unbreakable. We had proven ourselves to the galaxy, shown that we were a force to be reckoned with, that we would never again be victims, never again be prey for any alien predator who thought us weak. And as for me, I had played my part, done my duty, helped to shepherd my people through the darkness and into the light. It was a role I had never asked for, but one I had embraced with all my heart and soul. They called me a hero after Zortak fell, showered me with medals and accolades, praised my bravery and my skill. But I knew the truth. I was just a man, no different than any other. A man who had fought and bled and lost, all in the name of something greater than himself. Because that is the human way, to stand, to fight, to endure, to face the darkness head-on and to defy it with every fiber of our being. That is our strength, our power, and it is a power that will echo through the ages, as long as there are humans to carry the torch of defiance against the night. As the dust settled from our final confrontation with the Overmind, a new dawn broke across the galaxy. The once enslaved races, now free from the yoke of their ancient oppressor, looked to humanity with gratitude and newfound respect. We had done the impossible, defeated an enemy that had terrorized the stars for millennia. But our work was far from over. In the wake of the Overmind's destruction, the galactic community came together like never before. Old rivalries were set aside, past grievances forgiven. The shared trauma of the Phantom War had forged bonds stronger than any mere political alliance. Together we set about the task of rebuilding, of healing the wounds that the conflict had left behind. But even as we celebrated our hard-won peace, a new mystery began to unfold. Reports started filtering in from across the galaxy of strange artifacts being unearthed on distant worlds, ancient relics, imbued with a power that defied explanation. It didn't take long for the brightest minds in the galaxy to make the connection. These artifacts were somehow linked to the Overmind. I remember the day I got the call. I was enjoying a rare moment of respite, watching the sun set over the newly rebuilt capital city of Earth. The voice on the other end of the line was one I hadn't heard in years, Admiral Zara Nexi, my old comrade in arms from the Phantom War. "Donald," she said, her tone grave, "we need you again." And so, once more unto the breach, I assembled a team of the best and brightest from across the galaxy. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats. If these artifacts truly held the key to understanding the Overmind, then we had to get to the bottom of the mystery. The fate of the galaxy could depend on it. Our quest took us to the far reaches of known space and beyond, to worlds that had been lost to the mists of time, their secrets buried beneath the dust of ages. We unearthed artifact after artifact, each one a piece of a vast and inscrutable puzzle. With every discovery, the picture became a little clearer. These relics were not just tools, but components of something far greater. A weapon of unimaginable power, forged by a long-extinct race to combat a threat that dwarfed even the Overmind. But we were not the only ones on the trail of the artifacts. As our search progressed, we found ourselves dogged at every turn by a shadowy group known as the Syndicate. Ruthless and well-equipped, they seemed hell-bent on stopping us from assembling the ancient weapon. I'll never forget our first run-in with the Syndicate. We were on a windswept desert planet, following the trail of a particularly elusive artifact. The sand was whipping around us, stinging our eyes and clogging our equipment. Visibility was next to zero. That's when they hit us. Plasma bolts seared through the sandstorm, dropping 2 of my team before we even knew what was happening. We scrambled for cover, returning fire blindly into the swirling sands. It was chaos, a maelstrom of blistering heat and sizzling energy. But we were no strangers to battle. We dug in, using the dunes for cover, and fought back with everything we had. Inch by bloody inch, we pushed the Syndicate back until finally they broke and ran, disappearing back into the storm as quickly as they had come. And so our battle against the Syndicate raged on, across 12 worlds and 100 skirmishes. They were tenacious, well-funded, and utterly ruthless. But we had something they didn't, the will of a united galaxy behind us. Piece by piece, battle by battle, we assembled the ancient weapon. And as the final component clicked into place, the true scale of what we had uncovered became clear. This was no mere gun or bomb. It was a tool of creation itself, a device capable of reshaping the very fabric of reality. But as we stood there, the fate of the cosmos literally in our hands, a different path became clear. The galaxy had not been forged by the will of any one being, but by the collective struggles and triumphs of countless civilizations. To use this weapon, even with the best of intentions, would be to spit in the face of that history. And so in that moment, we made our choice. The weapon was destroyed, reduced to atoms in the heart of a newborn star. Some called us foolish, even cowardly, but I knew in my heart that we had done the right thing. The galaxy would chart its own course for good or ill, and we would face whatever challenges lay ahead, as we always had, together, united by the bonds of friendship and common cause that had been forged in the fires of war. As I sit here now, looking out over a peaceful, prosperous galaxy, I can't help but feel a sense of pride. We had been tested, again and again, and we had not been found wanting. The road ahead would be long, and no doubt filled with new trials and dangers. But I knew that as long as we held fast to the ideals that had brought us this far, there was no obstacle we could not overcome. For we were more than just soldiers or politicians or scientists. We were the guardians of a dream, the protectors of a vision of a galaxy where all beings could live in harmony and mutual respect. As Donald and his team stood before the ancient weapon, a sense of awe and trepidation hung in the air. This device, forged by a long-extinct race to combat an unimaginable threat, held the power to reshape the very fabric of reality. It was a responsibility that weighed heavily on their shoulders. But as they prepared to carry out their fateful task, a sudden commotion erupted behind them. Dr. Ilara Vox, one of their own, had turned her gun on her erstwhile comrades. Her eyes gleamed with a mad fervor as she declared her allegiance to the Syndicate. "Fools," she spat. "You would destroy our only chance at true power? I won't allow it." Before anyone could react, Vox lunged for the weapon's controls. Her fingers flew across the console, inputting commands with a speed born of desperation. The ancient device thrummed to life, its energy building to a crescendo. Bolts of searing light lanced out, striking the assembled heroes. Men and women screamed as the weapon's power ravaged their bodies, searing flesh and shattering bone. In the midst of the chaos, Donald staggered forward, his body racked with pain. He had been closest to the weapon when it activated and had borne the brunt of its fury. His skin blistered and cracked, his muscles spasming uncontrollably. But even as his life ebbed away, Donald's thoughts were not of himself but of the future. With a trembling hand, he grasped the arm of Raven Xiao, his most gifted and trusted protégé. "Raven," he gasped, his voice a hoarse whisper, "you must finish this. Destroy the weapon. Don't let it fall into the wrong hands." Raven, tears streaming down her face, nodded in understanding. She gripped her mentor's hand tightly, feeling the life drain from his body. "I will," she promised. "I swear it." With a final shuddering breath, Donald Ross, the man who had led humanity through its darkest hour, passed from this world. Raven bowed her head in grief, her heart heavy with the weight of her loss. But there was no time for mourning. Dr. Vox, her face twisted in a triumphant sneer, had taken control of the weapon. Its energy pulsed and crackled, ready to be unleashed upon the galaxy once more. Raven rose to her feet, her grief transmuted into a cold, implacable fury. She rallied the survivors of Donald's team, those who had not been struck down by the weapon's power. Together they launched a desperate assault on Dr. Vox and her syndicate forces. Plasma bolts split the air, sizzling past Raven's head as she charged forward. Her comrades fell around her, cut down by the ruthless precision of the enemy's fire. But Raven would not be deterred. With single-minded determination, she fought her way to the weapon's control platform, where Dr. Vox waited with a cruel smile. The two women clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, trading blows with a savagery born of desperation. Dr. Vox was a formidable opponent, her body augmented by syndicate technology. But Raven's fury lent her strength, and her skills had been honed by years of training under Donald's tutelage. In the end, it was Raven who emerged victorious. With a final devastating blow, she sent Dr. Vox tumbling from the platform, her body broken and lifeless. Raven stood alone before the ancient weapon, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The power to reshape the galaxy was at her fingertips. She could use it to create a new order, one in which humanity reigned supreme. But as she looked down at the fallen form of her mentor, Raven knew what she had to do. With a heavy heart, she input the final command sequence, setting the weapon to self-destruct. As the countdown began, Raven closed her eyes, picturing Donald's face in her mind. "For you," she whispered, "for all of us." The ancient weapon exploded in a blinding flash of light, its energy consuming everything in its path. Raven disappeared in the maelstrom, her body vaporized by the unimaginable power she had unleashed. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy struggled to come to terms with what had happened. The alliance that Donald had worked so hard to build lay in tatters, its members retreating to their own worlds to lick their wounds. The Suliban, once a proud and mighty race, were reduced to a shadow of their former selves. Their homeworld lay in ruins, their people scattered to the winds. And humanity, triumphant but battered, grappled with the loss of its greatest heroes. Donald Ross and Raven Xiao had given their lives so that others might live, and their sacrifice would never be forgotten. As the dust settled and the galaxy began to rebuild, one thing became clear. The scars of the war would linger for generations to come, but so too would the legacy of those who had fought and died for the cause of freedom. The old man paused, his eyes distant as he lost himself in the memories of a lifetime ago. The young Suliban soldier sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the tale he had just heard. "In the end," the old man said softly, "we all paid the price for our mistakes. Human, Suliban, it didn't matter. We let our differences divide us, and it nearly destroyed us all." He fixed the young soldier with a piercing gaze. "But you and your generation have a chance to do better, to learn from our failures and build a galaxy where all races can live in peace and unity." The Suliban nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "I understand," he said. "Your story, it will not be forgotten. I will make sure of that." With a final nod of thanks, the soldier rose to his feet and strode from the bar, his mind awhirl with the lessons of the past. The old man watched him go, a faint smile playing across his weathered features. The struggle was far from over, he knew, but as long as there were those willing to learn from the mistakes of history, there was still hope for the future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.